There's a feeling you get here in Africa that you can't find anywhere else in the world. It's often described by the great explorers as a sense of coming home, but for me it's much more a feeling of being close to one's roots. The art of bushcraft is all about being close to nature, relying on our understanding and knowledge of the natural world that surrounds us. While I'm here, I'm going to meet two tribes who've managed to pass down this knowledge through the generations, and for who this still remains a strong and active part of their lives, despite the effects of modernisation. The first tribe I'm going to meet are the Hadza. They're amongst the last hunter-gatherers on Earth, and bushcraft is central to the very way they live. I filmed with them 8 years ago, so I'm really looking forward to seeing them again. The Hadza live here in northern Tanzania, and my journey to see them will take me across some of the most spectacular landscapes in Eastern Africa. They're a nomadic tribe who gather wild plants and hunt with the bow in the forested shores of Lake Eyasi. I have to tell you, it's fantastic to be back in Tanzania. And while I'm here, I'm going to be camping out. This is the beginning of the long rains, and so the climatic conditions are going to vary enormously on this journey, because at this time of year the weather can be very unreliable. The first leg of my journey takes me from Arusha, the capital of northern Tanzania, west to Karatu. Distances are huge in this country and the population is small. Karatu is the last township on my route. It's a bustling centre, crammed full of people and crammed full of shops. Going west, the next habitation of any size is a day's journey away. It's amazing just how much Karatu has changed since I was last here. It's only taken me a couple of hours to get here because of the new road that's being completed in the centre of town here now. The last time it was an all-day journey on slidey, muddy roads. Now in a town like this you can buy just about anything. I've got to get some repairs done, I've got to get something made, and I've got to buy some fresh food. I feel it's a bit like the last petrol station before the motorway, a final chance to stock up before a journey. I wanted to get a griddle made up to my own plans, and my guide Cambona knew just the place.
How are you?
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Yeah, okay, Mr. Leonard here.
I'd already drawn this diagram which would help. One of the things I really like about Africa is that you can get anything made very easily.
What you have here?
Yeah,
Square pipe.
yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll see you later on.
Okay, welcome.
All the best.
Okay, thanks
Nice
very
to
much.
meet you.
Okay, thanks.
I'll tell you what I really need to get with all this rain that we're going to have. I think we need to get some libation for the crew, keep them happy. What about that knockout whiskey?
Knockout.
and whiskey.
Knockout whiskey.
Yeah, spirit of Africa.
Spirit of Africa. Feel the taste and see the difference. I've never seen that. That's a stranger's miniature. Look at that, a sachet of whiskey. Knockout. Muhammad Ali on there, I think that's it. Their African markets are fantastic. I really like them. Many years ago I learned from people in Zaire, as it was then, that they say that tourists are often afraid to come into an African market, so they stay around the outside. But when you actually go into the market, you're absolutely safe because the shopkeepers value your business and they keep an eye out for you. It's amazing what you find. These are charcoal braziers. Amazing. Just knocked together from old oil tins, I think. Just about everything here gets recycled. We could really learn a few lessons. I need 6.
6?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's good. Asante sana. I wonder if you can help. The sole is coming unglued. Can you fix that?
Yes.
That would be brilliant. Thank you.
That's 1,000.
Yep, no worries.
Here.
Yep, marvellous. Well, that's a fine looking griddle. Thank you.
Yeah, I try to finish.
Ah, yes. First. That's brilliant. Is that for sale as well?
For here?
Yes.
You like this one?
Yeah. Thank you.
Karibu sana.
Karibu. With all the stocks I needed from Karatu, I headed further west towards the Hadza. I love it when the road gives way to dust tracks. You really feel like your journey's begun. This part of Africa is a bit of a backwater. It's off of the tourist routes, and I'm really excited because I'm hoping to catch up with some people I worked with about 8 years ago called the Hadza. And they are one of the last true hunter-gatherer groups still living a traditional life on the planet. And I'm aware that as I look out at this landscape, I barely understand or know anything about these trees. But to Hadza, this is their home, and they know each of these trees intimately and all about this landscape. That's what's exciting. I'm very close now to where I want to set up my camp, so I can start keeping my eyes open for the right sort of place. This looks great. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a fly camp. When I travel in this sort of climate, I really like to travel light as possible, very simple. I'm just going to put up a big tarp here and have my whole world underneath it. I know I could use a tent, but I prefer a fly camp because, as you'll see, it's really flexible. You can, of course, use really lightweight tarpaulins, but for a camp like this, I actually like good old-fashioned canvas. It has a certain degree of solidity that a lightweight nylon fly sheet doesn't provide. It gives a much better sense of home. The crew prefer the comfort of tents, and some local lads offer to help with the luxurious shower. This is water. I'll put this in the shade here, but there's a stream just here, and I'll also collect water from that. As long as I boil it, it'll be fine. There are just a couple of other essential items for this sort of camping. One is a shovel. This is a really good one. It's got a solid metal handle all the way up. It's good for the African soil, which is very hard. I can use that to move embers from my fire for cooking, and use it to dig my latrine. Also, if a hyena comes too close in the night, you can always give him a belt on the head with it. And my bedroll and a mosquito net. Next to fire. I never feel at home until the campfire's burning. We're in the rainy season, so things are a little more damp than they may appear. And bark like this makes very good tinder. What I have to do is soften it up, twist it, roll it between your hands like this, and then manipulate it like that. It starts to become fibrous, and that will catch fire really easily and readily. You can see it's starting to get nice and fibrous now. That'll catch light really easy. A spark stick is a very reliable way of making fire, especially in damp weather. In minutes my brew was ready. Well, that's it. Fly camp established. Very easy, very simple, and there's a really nice atmosphere in a fly camp. You get the shade from the sun, which is nice, but you also get a nice cooling breeze running through the side of the tarp, and wherever you look you can see out. And this of course is the way the old pioneers who came to Africa to explore it for the first time, this is how they travelled. Had to be simple. Fantastic. Next morning was an early start in order to prepare some bread for breakfast. It's an easy recipe with beer, which gives a nice yeasty flavour. Keeping it simple is the principle we employ out here always. A heavy cast iron pot like this holds the heat, so you can roast or bake with it. It's a brilliant cooking device. Just prop that to keep it cool. While my bread was baking, across the clearing I saw the face of an old friend. When I was last with the Hadza tribe, I worked closely with this man. Gudo. Mitana.
Mitana.
How are you?
I'm sorry, son.
A long while.
Grey.
Gudo.
So.
Because your hair's gone grey.
I'm gonna shoot it. Ready?
Yeah.
So.
It seemed like yesterday that I was filming with Gudo. I got to know him well, as he understands English, although he's reluctant to speak it. Been a long while. Come and have a seat. I haven't seen Gudo since 1997. It's fantastic to see him. We spent a lot of time here filming. It was wonderful. His hair's going grey, and I've shaved my beard off. But it's really nice to see you. Bushcraft gives me a special connection with the Hadza, and I'd always wanted to return. Things are overdone. In the excitement of meeting Gudo, I left the bread in a bit too long, but Gudo was too polite to refuse. And Andy, the sound man, didn't seem to notice. This is the bow this is an English bow. I had this bow made up specially by a top craftsman in England. When I was last here, the Hadza wanted to know more about English bows, and I thought the best way to show them was to take them one. I hoped Gudo would accept it as a gift. What did he say, Cambona?
Oh, the all wild animals do. They will know me.
Gudo also told Cambona that it shot like a gun and insisted on chanting to the bow. Do you think we can find the arrow? It was great to see Gudo again, and the Hadza village was only just through the woods. This walk through the bushes to get there was like stepping back in time. The Hadza live a very traditional lifestyle. They're semi-nomadic, moving when they feel they must, with very few possessions. I thought toys from our world are always of interest to the children. How are you? Nice to see you.
Another
Another person I met from last time was Mustafa. When I met him last, he was learning herbalism. Now he's an expert in all the traditional uses of the bush, and he showed me what he'd learnt of the plants in this area. Ndushibi. Yep.
Hako hamana mugurumbi yako. Hako hamana mugurumbi yako kateta utaishina.
It's the medicine we use. We take the leaves and chew it a little and then spit it out.
It
It is to treat the ear. The moisture treats infection in the ears.
Nuba air. Nice.
These plants call it Hammond by the Hadza. This is the medicine that you take if you have bitten by a poison snake. It makes you vomit and have diarrhea. This makes you get rid of the poison from the system. Then you can boil the leaves as smoothing drink.
Mustafa told me he'd been bitten by two of Africa's most poisonous snakes, the black and the green mamba. That's incredible. You don't very often hear of people surviving the bites of both a green and a black mamba. Sometimes people call the black mamba the 15-step snake. You take 15 steps after being bitten and drop dead. And it says an awful lot for their ability to deal with medical problems. Back at camp, it was time to do some laundry. It's really important when you're out here in the wilds to keep your clothing and yourself as clean as you can. Probably one of the most important and often forgotten items of equipment is a small nail brush that really helps to keep things clean and tidy. And to dry them, what better than a bush coat hanger? What I'm going to do is double that back like this and just begin to make a little rope. And that should do. It's plenty long enough now. Just clean the stick up of any sharp bits. I don't want to make holes in any washing I do. Particularly at the end of this stick, round it off nicely. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to untwist that a little bit so I get a loop and just feed the stick in through there. There it is. Then I can hang that up on my washing line and I've got a coat hanger. What hardly anybody knows about this country is that it was the scene of a forgotten and hard-fought guerrilla campaign during the First World War. I find it impossible to imagine that nearly 50,000 Europeans camped out here during that conflict. It's a forgotten campaign in which the Allies sustained heavy losses. But the war fought here in East Africa wasn't anything like the one being fought in Europe. Here it was a case of manoeuvre and of guerrilla warfare, fought always in the bush. The greatest tactician by far proved to be the German commander, von Lettow-Vorbeck, whose knowledge of the terrain of East Africa proved to be the superior. The British imagined they'd make short work of the Germans, But in an early battle, the Battle of Tanga, in spite of having 8 times as many men, the Allies suffered a massive defeat. Leto Vorbek's secret weapon were his askari, native troops collected together from local tribes who had had an intimate knowledge of the terrain and understood the rigours of survival. While the British were dying in droves from dysentery and suffering infestations of guinea worms and jiggers, the askari and Germans remained fit. It's no mere fluke that the German army fared so much better. After the war, von Leto Vorbek wrote an account of his wartime experiences, and from this it becomes clear just how reliant he and his men were on their ability to live from the land. In fact, he made use of every natural material possible. The skins of animals killed for food were turned into boots.
My experience showed me that the German can go barefoot where there are tolerable paths, but never through the bush. I had some lessons in boot making and succeeded with supervision in producing an object that at a push could be taken for a left boot, though it was intended to be a right.
The Allies simply weren't used to living out in the woods and found it difficult enough to survive, let alone provide an effective fighting force. The Germans, taking their cue from the askari, quickly learnt that the bush was a rich food source. They used the muhogo root, which tasted like sweet potato, the pori nut with its rich and creamy flavour, and the umlenda leaf, which doubled as spinach. They also learned that these woods could double as a survival kit, if only you knew how. Understanding the potential of trees and plants is something that Leto Vorbek found particularly fascinating. Bark like this has got hundreds of uses. You can use it to bind things together, turn it into string, and of course bark was what von Leto Vorbek used to improvise bandages for his injured soldiers. Stringy bark became an essential part of Leto Vorbek's first aid kit.
Feels like a cast.
Feels like a cast. Yeah, it's amazing. This bark, you know, it's very effective. It's quite soft, and yet it's also very supporting. So you can imagine maybe putting something absorbent underneath there, some old flannelette boiled up and cleaned off, or maybe even some moss. When at last armistice was declared, it took a further 2 weeks before the news reached von Leto Vorbek. At that time he still had an effective fighting force of 3,000 men, but nonetheless had to surrender. The British officers were delighted to at last have the chance to meet this legendary German general, some of them openly admitting that they had more affection and esteem for him than they did for their own leaders. That evening, using my new griddle, I planned a treat for the crew. Well, I was hoping to cook some bananas with chocolate in them, but I discovered the production crew had managed to eat all of the chocolate we'd brought with us. So I'm resorting to improvisation, chocolate powder and knockout whiskey. We'll see how it works. This could be rocket fuel. Oh, you'll only have to guess. You can only guess what these taste like. Take it from me, the secret ingredient is Tanzanian knockout whiskey, the one with Muhammad Ali on the front. The Hadza live and breathe bushcraft, but of course they don't realise it. It's just the way they are. Understandably, for hunters, bows and arrows are central to their existence. Making them is an important everyday task. All the ingredients come from the bush. The glue is made by chewing a variety of different plant materials. The fletching affects the speed and accuracy of the arrow. The twine he's using was made from animal sinews. The Hadza are real people of the bow. Even when they're not hunting, they love to shoot. This scene reminded me of paintings from medieval England. It resonates with our own bushcraft heritage.
He's a very good shot.
I have to shoot very gingerly with these bows, because the last time I shot one of these I broke it. I mean, these are strong bows. They're not light bows at all, but they're very stiff in action. The wood is very stiff, and it isn't quite the same oomph from the bow. You can hear that. String's not quite as tight, but they're, you know, they do the job quite clearly. Everyone wanted to shoot Gudo's new bow. One of the things that's really special about bushcraft is it is its own language. To come here with a bow from my country and put it in the hands of a Hadza gives them the same joy that I've had shooting their bows and their arrows. Some things just transcend language and international boundaries. And I really think that, you know, these sorts of experiences bring us closer, human beings from different cultures, bring us closer in understanding to each other. At nightfall, it was time once again to rig up my sleeping arrangements. This is where the fly camp comes into its own. A couple of changes and my living room was instantly transformed into my bedroom. The net needs to be well tucked in against visiting creepy crawlies. I really like the simplicity of this style of camping. Just one roof, everything else just moves around and you rearrange it for whatever you're doing. Sleeping out like this is wonderful. You don't wake up with that shut out feeling. I think that's a very big part of being in Africa. You might have to be careful there. In game parks, people wouldn't smile upon you trying to camp out this way when there's such a heavy population of wild animals. But of course the fire is part of the safety here. And in this area, at this time, there shouldn't be any problems at all. And I'm looking forward to a comfortable night. First light, and the Hadza women had invited me to see how they gather food from the bush. These are what you'd call professional fruit pickers, climbing right to the top of the bush not to miss a shot. The berries they're collecting are these. The Hadza call them ndushibi, and they're very sticky, sweet fruit with a large stone in the middle. I've eaten these before. It's nice to taste an old friend. These berries play an important part in the Hadza diet, but carbohydrates from roots are also essential. This is the plant the Hadza have been digging up. It's called sumako, and you can see it there at the end of this narrow vine, like treasure, absolutely packed full of carbohydrate, which means energy and happiness. That belongs to this vine here with these small leaves. Now the secret to get this food is not really in the digging, it's in the spotting of the plant. To find this, you don't just need sharp eyes to pick these leaves out from amongst all the rest. You've also got to be able to recognise the habitat and know the right time of year to dig it up. That's something that the Hadza understand probably better than anyone. To the casual observer, it's really difficult to spot the different habitats in this landscape. The Hadza have uses for many plants, but they have one tree which is very special, the baobab. What a fantastic sight. And this is a really important tree for survival in the African bush. It provides a host of different resources. At this time of year, when the leaves are on the tree, those green leaves can be collected and cooked as a spinach. The fruit that forms can be broken open and the pulp used to make cream of tartar. The seeds can be turned into coffee, or either of them can be used to make a porridge. And if you're thirsty, you can cut into the bark, cut out little sections of the inner bark and suck them to get the moisture from them. You often find pegs like this going up the sides of the trees, usually to bees' nests that have been raided for honey. But in this case, it's going up to a hollow in the tree where water used to collect, and that was once a Hadza well. This one is even hollow, and if it was raining, I could climb in here for shelter. Isn't it incredible? What a fantastic space. And there's a secret. Most of the local Hadza women come to this tree to give birth. It means that many of the Hadza in this area were actually born inside this tree, literally children of nature.
I have 9 children, 8 girls and 1 boy, and I gave birth to all of them inside the baobab tree. I stay in the tree for a month each time until the baby umbilical cord came away and the skin went darker. It is part of our culture. I and my ancestor have given birth in the baobab tree. I think if the custom dies away, you will see the Hadza people dying away as well.
It was wonderful to see the Hadza still thriving, but how long their world will stay the same is hard to tell. The Hadza still live quite isolated lives, but there are other tribes who share this territory. The best known to the outside world are the Maasai, and they live on the hills nearby. I had the opportunity to visit the Maasai, and I was interested to see the differences between them and the Hadza. Although it's a stone's throw from the village, nothing's simple in Africa, and the journey takes half a day on winding tracks. Unlike the Hadza, the Maasai live in a fixed village surrounded by rich pasture land for cattle. Cows are central to their way of life, as Ollie Dorop, a village elder, told me.
Our story said that for the long time, there's something coming just like a rope down to the world.
A rope from the sky to the world.
Yes, a rope to the sky down to the world. And cows follow down to the Maasai area. The Maasai people took that story that even the white people, even black people, all the cattle in the world, they belong to the Maasai.
I think the farmers where I come from would be a bit upset to hear that.
Yes, sure.
I'd been invited to a very special place where traditions are handed from one generation to the next. It's called an olpul. It was a real privilege, as very few Westerners are welcomed here. It's a long way from the village, hidden in a deep ravine, where the young men can stay for days, sometimes weeks. This is their bushcraft school. It's a spiritual place where generations of young Maasai have been initiated into the accumulated knowledge of how to live safely in the bush. Every plant around here has a use, and the wonderful thing is that the knowledge is still being handed on. The goat plays an essential part. It's providing the meal which will sustain them during their stay. The quiet and dignified manner in which the goat was smothered made a deep impression on me. This may look gory, but fresh blood and meat is part of their tradition and forms a key element of their initiation into manhood. What I was seeing is very special, so I took notes in case I forgot any detail. The most important part of the meal is a soup made simply from boiling the goat flesh, but a key addition is the bark of the umtogo tree, which is found just near the olpul. They believe adding this will reduce the risk of infection from the meat. I find it fascinating the different uses that tribal people have for the plants that surround them, particularly the medicinal uses. And the Maasai are using it here as an antibacterial. In South Africa, this same tree has been tested and found to have antibacterial and anti-inflammatory properties. If we don't record this knowledge and pay proper regard to it before the modern world swamps cultures like this, we may lose a pharmacy that's waiting there to help us. As I watched them drink their soup, I was struck by how timeless the ritual seemed and wondered just how old it was.
The tradition is very old. I can say 100 years or more than 100,000. Because for the Maasai people, just olpul and the other traditional things, it is we must take, to be strong, to take care of our culture.
One of the other lessons is in the use of the spear for self-defense. Where the Hadza use the bow and arrow, for the Maasai it's the spear. Years ago, the young men, or warriors as the Maasai called them, had to display their skill with the spear at an elaborate initiation ceremony which involved hunting and killing a lion. Today, they'd only kill a lion if they were in danger. An Englishman who would have seen the Maasai fighting lions was Harry Johnston. A pioneer, Johnston fell in love with and wrote about what was then called British Central Africa. He spent his life travelling, meeting tribes, and importantly, making the earliest recordings of their voices and their songs. Because he was in this part of Africa, I'd play this to you and see whether you can make any of it out. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Thank you.
I brought one with me on mini disc. This was a real long shot. After all, I wasn't even certain these voices were Maasai. Could you recognize any of that?
They say that that means that the white spear straight. White spear straight, white spear. And when they do that, they must show the spear like this. I
was stunned that Ollie Dorop recognised the song. Johnston made dozens of recordings, and I'd had no idea whether any would be recognisable to the Maasai today. It's amazing, isn't it? That was made in the 1890s.
1890s.
Voices from the past. Johnston gives us an idea just how far back Maasai traditions extend.
Yes.
I left pleased to see just how important bushcraft still is in their lives, but I was looking forward to getting back to the Hadza. I feel a special kinship with hunter-gatherers like the Hadza, but I couldn't help wondering what their future holds in store. I was really looking forward to this day. I was going tracking, which is one of my favourite bushcraft skills. It's fantastic to come out tracking with people like the Hadza. Their lives absolutely depend upon this skill. It's also one of the most enjoyable aspects of bushcraft because it really challenges your senses, makes you look at the landscape in a different way. But when you're tracking, you're not following nice clear footprints. It's not that easy. What you're actually following are tiny little hints and traces. What you do is you pick up the trail. You find some sign you can identify, and then you gain a sense of the direction of the trail. At that point, you have to stand back and look at the landscape as a whole and try to figure out where the animal is most likely to have gone. Then you go over to those openings and you search again to pick up the sign that connects with yours. In that way, you can jump distances and leapfrog forwards. It's much quicker than following each track slavishly. If you didn't have an understanding of what's going on, you might think we were just wandering around aimlessly, but we're not. All the time they're keeping their face into the wind so that their scent is not passing forwards. But tracking with a film crew in tow is difficult, so the likelihood of actually catching up with an animal was sadly remote. What happened is that they spotted some movement way down the bottom, and then as it went down, you could hear an alarm call come up from the birds in the forest there. So they think it's a carnivore, but they're not really sure. Their life is a very dangerous one. I'm glad I have a bow in my hand. I think it just does two things. Animals see the silhouette of it. They know it means that you're dangerous and more likely to leave you alone. And of course, ultimately, it can provide some protection. It's rained on this track, so it's difficult to see. It's the track of a leopard. Tracking here is really quite difficult. The ground is very hard, and what we're not going to get is really clear, simple footprints. What we see here, though, is various disturbances. Firstly, the track is depressed into the ground, and you can see it's quite a heavy animal because this ground is quite firm. There's this piece of grass. You see how that's been bent into the track? That can help us to age this track. Now, I think that this track was made probably this morning or during the night. It's difficult to say. It's within the last maybe 6 hours, but I could be wrong. I'm not good here in this terrain because this isn't my natural tracking ground. It's not somewhere I know. I've got to learn the sign here. But what we'll do now is put that to the test, a bit like bargain hunt, and ask Guido, how old do you think this track is, Guido?
Mana. Baby.
2 hours.
Baby.
2 hours old, so not too bad. If the Hadza hunt a leopard, they'll eat it. It's on the menu, definitely. But it's a great threat to them, and many of the Hadza men carry scars from leopards. Janjaya. That's the Hadza word for leopard. Janjaya.
We hadn't seen a leopard, but Guido has had plenty of encounters in his life before.
You were hunting one day, right? Yeah.
Mimi niliwinda. Nikampiga chui. Sema na wewe.
I went out hunting and came across a leopard. I shot it with my bow and arrow, but the poison wasn't strong enough. As I came near, the leopard pretended to be dead, then attacked me. I fought the leopard for 30 minutes and at least I managed to kill him.
Every hunter has his story.
When I was a little boy, I was able to kill birds. Once I also killed a vervet monkey and took it back to the camp. The women were impressed. My father took me out when I was a little and told me, "Okay, I am off back to the camp and you have to come alone. If you come across dangerous animals, you must kill them." I came across a buffalo and shot him, but the arrow wasn't strong enough. I lay on the ground to avoid his horns, and as he approached, I hit him on his nose with a stick and he ran away. We can survive here as God has given us the bow and arrow. This is how we are meant to live.
The Hadza live in a balance with nature we no longer understand. The reality of hunting is that although the pickings are often lean, they'll take what they can, but only what they need. But it's a way of life that's under threat. Despite being kings in the bush, the Hadza, like so many hunter-gatherers, fare badly in the world of politics. They rarely, if ever, have control over their own destiny. The Maasai, more numerous and powerful than the Hadza, have formalized their bushcraft and made it work in the context of the 21st century. The Hadza's way of life and their total dependence on bushcraft seems more fragile and could so easily disappear.
It was a very comfortable night. One of the things about sleeping under a tarp is you wake up early, but this morning I was woken especially early as at about 4 o'clock this morning the heavens opened, it being the rainy season, and my Hadza friends here came to join me, lit the fire, so we got up and had a cup of cocoa together. I think that's probably the first cup of hot chocolate they've ever had. Anyway, it's all part of the fun of being out here, and I think that when you travel like this and you meet different cultures, you realise how similar we all are around the world. And it's in those small, quiet moments, maybe a steaming cup of cocoa on a rainy morning, that you really discover what humanity is really all about.
It was only 5:30 a.m, but the day was already in full swing.
I think he said something like smooth as a baby's bottom. I have to say, shaving is like a ritual. It's just superb. To have a shave is like to have a whole bath sometimes. Now, you'll think this is all set up, but it's not. What you see around you is exactly as life is here. Falange. Falange. Come on, give us some music. This is like turning the radio on in the morning. Okay. Now, walking embodiment of Radio 1. Come on, give us some music.
Who needs the trappings of modern life when you've got all of this around you?
This is exactly as it is out here. Fantastic. Grand finale.
It's moments like this that stay with you forever.
I'll tell you what, when it's time to leave, it'll be really hard to tear myself away from here.
It's 6 o'clock in the morning and things are turning into a party. It was my last day with the Hadza and we'd got a surprise for them. We were going to show them the film we made the last time I was here.
Try and get that stable, that's probably high enough, isn't it? All right. Watching, can't we? This is great, being able to come back and show them the film we made the last time. It's going to be interesting to see their response.
Andy? Yeah, who was the crew on that one?
Might move back a bit if it's in the way.
Brilliant, thank you. I've been invited to eat some of the root that we dug up. Let's spit the fibres out. Yeah? Yeah? And that tastes like...
The Hadza don't have family albums full of photos, so these images of themselves from the past were a real surprise. But don't expect applause and cheering at the end. The Hadza have their own way of showing their appreciation.
It's quite amazing, really. There are a few very tearful eyes there. It's pretty special. The only comment that was made is that they wish that people we'd filmed had been wearing skins. It's very difficult to express, but you know, these are some of the most precious people on earth.
Nyandolo